Today we're going to learn about the first people to have lived in Ohio. Now we call them Native Americans, or some people call them Indians. Let's learn more. Here's a quick timeline of the Native Indians of Ohio. In 10,000 BC, which was a really long time ago, the Paleo Indian era happened during the Stone Age culture. This was the earliest humans who lived in America, and they lived in caves and were nomadic hunters, which means they traveled around hunting their food. And they hunted mostly the great mammoth and giant bison. In 7,500 BC, the Eastern Woodland culture began. This is when people started living in permanent houses and farming. In 7000 BC, the Archaic period, in which people built basic shelters and made stone weapons and stone tools. In 1700 BC, the mound builders culture began, a feature of many woodland tribes. We're going to talk a lot about the woodland tribes in this presentation. Two of these mounds in Ohio that were built by the woodland tribes are called Serpent Mound and Alligator Mound. In 1000 AD, the woodland period, including the Adena culture, mounds, a burial complex, and ceremonial system, the Adena lived in a variety of locations, including Ohio and the Hopewell cultures. So let's learn a little bit more. The Paleo Indian culture, which is very ancient, very, very old, they hunted huge wild animals. They gathered seeds, nuts, and roots to eat, and the women used bone needles to sew animal hides together. The Archaic Indians lived in Ohio's tall forests. Since the bigger animals, like the giant bison and the mammoth, were extinct by then, these Archaic Indians hunted deer, turkey, bear, geese, and ducks. The Archaic Indians used every part of the animals they hunted. The flesh was used for food. The hides were used for blankets, clothing, and bags. The hides were the skin. Bones and antlers were used for tools. Claws and teeth were made into necklaces. The Woodland people included the Adena and the Hopewell. They grew some of their own food and saved it for the winter. They lived along Ohio's rivers. Although not permanent, they still moved around. And they built large mounds of earth into many shapes. The Adena people, among the woodland people, these people used water from the rivers for washing, cooking, and drinking. Sometimes they lived in caves. Sometimes they made homes out of poles, put in a circle, and placing branches and grasses over the poles. They made fine jewelry and created art. The Adena people also built mounds. Cone shapes were used to bury the dead. Most of the dead were placed in log tombs. Their bodies were painted red or black. Jewelry, art, metals, and seashells were buried with the dead. A few of the dead were cremated or burned. More information about the Adena people. The Miamisburg Mound is the largest Adena burial mound. The Adena people also built effigy mounds. An effigy is an image or work of art in the shape of a living thing. The Hopewell people were also woodland people. The mounds of the Hopewell were always geometric in shape: circles, rectangles, squares, or even octagons. They cremated most of their dead, and mounds were built over their ashes. The Hopewell people also built tall walls out of the earth around large fields. These fields may have been used for religious ceremonies or a marketplace. The Hopewell traded many things, like seashells, pearls, copper, and obsidian. You can still see the walls and the mounds that the Hopewell and Adena built down in southern Ohio. Where did the Woodland people go? No one knows what happened to the Adena and Hopewell Indians. Some think that famine, which is a lack of food, or disease spread throughout these people. Others think that war may have brought an end to the mound builders. Fort Ancient people. They built their cities on abandoned Hopewell sites. So after the Hopewell Indians had gone away, Fort Ancient people built their cities where the Hopewell used to be. They built pyramids with platforms on top. Unlike other people who had come before them, they grew corn and beans. Since they farmed, they could live in permanent villages and they didn't have to move around. Fort Ancient people decorated pottery with designs of animals and other things. Everyone wore silver clips in their hair and long strands of beads around their necks. Fort Ancient people, where did they go? They might have been pushed off their land by other tribes. They could have died from diseases brought from European explorers. Thanks for watching this presentation on the first people to have lived in Ohio. We're going to learn a lot more about them as we move through this unit, so stay tuned.